Hello and welcome to the Athletic NBA Show. It's Thursday. It's the NBA trade deadline. I'm Dave DeFore, and that means it's Nerder, she wrote. Joining me as they do each and every week, Seth Partnow and Mo DeKeel. Seth having a little bit of technical difficulties, but it's been that kind of day, guys. Exciting trade deadline. And we got to jump right in because so much stuff has happened. No trade more exciting to me than the Kevin Durant trade. Kevin Durant going to the Phoenix Suns late Wednesday night. Kevin Durant and TJ Warren going to Phoenix in exchange for Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, who's been shipped off to Milwaukee, 4 firsts and a first-round pick swap. Seth, I want to get your thoughts on this right away. I mean, obviously, this is a monumental trade, perhaps the greatest player ever traded midseason in NBA history, and a complete game changer for this season. The Phoenix Suns, they came in and we thought that they were going to be able to build on the last couple seasons. They've been a regular season juggernaut. Things have not gone their way so far this year. We find ourselves pulling away from them as contenders, saying they probably don't have it this year. And then they go out and make a trade like this, and all of a sudden we like them again.
There's two different things to talk about here. I mean, one is just quickly to touch on it. Matt Ishbia has owned the team for like 9 hours, and he's traded away it's like he doesn't want to go to draft day, but it has done it all now. So that's one aspect. We might get back into that, but it's a big gamble. It makes them better this year. I think a lot of the early commentary declaring them the favorites for the West or the favorites for the title is a bit overblown. They have 4 guys that they can count on. They have one way they can play. 3 of their 4 guys are a little injury prone at this point. Let's see them play together just a little bit before we announce that this is the new hot thing. I mean, how many times have we seen like a great player get traded and it not quite mesh with other top players? So while their top end is certainly higher, their championship equity is certainly higher, I don't think it might vault them into the same range as some other teams, but I don't think it like puts them above Denver or Memphis, at least not markedly so, as a Western Conference contender.
Yeah, no, I'm going to completely disagree with you, Seth, in that department. I just think first off, we've seen Kevin Durant come back from injuries multiple times at this point, and he comes back pretty damn good. You know, health is going to be the issue across the board. I mean, it's not like Denver's got the best record of clean bill of health. Memphis is massively injured right now with Jaren Jackson Jr. and Steven Adams, and Adams going down has really hurt the team a ton. Like there's a lot of those question marks there. Health is the thing for everybody has to deal with and contend with. There's no real way to say anything about it. But this team on the floor, you have to defend those 4 guys. And you know, it's not like they lack shooting. Also, off their bench and the guys that they have on their team, they can shoot the ball pretty well to begin with. I think they're going to have a ton of space offensively. I think KD is going to play really well off of those guys playing off ball. He's going to be put him as a ball screener, put him as the pick and roll ball handler. He's going to kill at that. I mean, yes, we're going to see him. It's going to be a little bit before we see this, probably be after the All-Star break. But when they come back, like there's no reason to me to look at this team going like this team should be the favorites in the West. I think they cause a lot of problems, a lot of matchup issues for the team like Denver, you know, down the stretch when they switch and they have to put Jokic guarding KD. Good luck. Because not a lot of people, not good defenders haven't had a lot of success defending KD. I feel like this is one of those things. This was a massive swing for it moment. I think this was probably a huge, like you couldn't ask for a better deal. I think from Phoenix to kind of just do this. This is it. And I think this was a big moment. And I kind of like Matt Ishbia, you know, basically 10 minutes after buying it, ripping open the box and saying, "Let's go."
I mean, look, if you're going to get a new toy, you might as well play with it. I think the questions that arise here are obviously depth. You lose a lot of depth on the wing. They basically don't have any wings outside of Torrey Craig and and KD. They did pick up Darius Baisley in a separate trade today for Dario Saric. And he's a guy who good athlete, can defend a little bit, but it's not going to do much offensively. But on this team, he wouldn't be asked to do much. So I think the question for you guys right now is, well, who's the fifth starter for this team? And then, that doesn't matter all that much, but just asking that question, it leads you to further questions about this team. Like, okay, who's their backup point guard? Are you going to just stick with campaign? Now, it seems like Phoenix is likely going to be able to pick and choose from the buyout market, and there's a lot of names that are going to hit the buyout market here soon. Do you guys think that they have anyone in-house that's going to fill both of these roles?
I think that's my worry is I think we see in the playoffs are often a weak link system. We have four guys on the Suns we're confident in. There's always
do we have
kind
four? Do we have four? Because
I mean,
I've got questions about Chris Paul. I mean, he's an advanced age small point guard at this point. And we've all been kind of having these conversations behind the scenes. Is Chris Paul actually washed finally now? I mean, I think that it certainly looks like it, and it varies from night to night. And KD is going to make his job easier, but Chris Paul might be the guy that gets picked on come playoff time.
I think there'll be some of that. Also, the fact that one of those the guys you trust is a center, I think, is limiting because, again, who else do you go to? I mean, how much do you want to have to play Torrey Craig in the playoffs? How much does TJ Warren have left? And again, if any of those three perimeter guys are banged up at all, so this isn't the normal, they don't have depth, they can only go 7 deep. We don't even know who 5, 6, and 7 are likely to be for Phoenix.
Well, I think 5 is going to be Torrey Craig to start. I think that's going to be a key thing. I think that's, and for everything that we're saying, and I'm not like a massive Torrey Craig fan, but he's shooting 40% from 3. Like, he's spreading the floor a little bit on 3 attempts. Like, there's an element to that in that range there. And then when we talk about Chris, like, there's no question Chris is going to have to sort of get going here a little bit. But yeah, the job gets a lot easier now because now he's not necessarily the second guy that has to make something happen for them. Now he's a third guy that has to make something happen for them. And I think that's a much easier task for him there. And to be honest, he's going to be in the pick and roll and just trying to take care of Ayton. Like, his job, I think, is going to be score less and pass more, which for Chris, he's going to love that. And I think defensively, they have some questions. The depth is an issue, but I also think part of the answer to the depth problem is going to be staggering these guys. At no point should the Suns ever have, assuming all good health, 2 of those 4 guys on the floor. For a full 48, 2 of those 4 guys should be on that floor, depending on how you want to play with combinations and what you want to do there. And I think there's a lot of things that are interesting with this team. I think they're just going to really cause a massive problem for teams defensively. Second side's going to be unbelievable. I mean, we kind of saw a little bit in Brooklyn when they had those 3 guys healthy, how hard it was to defend every option. And I think that's going to be along the lines of what you're going to have to deal with when you're playing the Suns. And I think at the end of the day, they have 2 guys who at the end of the clock will get a shot off.
I do think, again, I see what you're saying. I don't think that the other 2 guys alongside KD are. I think that the certainly the version of James Harden that got to Brooklyn was a little better than Devin Booker is now, and I think Kyrie Irving at that time was better than Chris Paul is now. But more pertinently, as we've been talking about, like, Brooklyn had good, solid guys around them in a lot of spots, and that's so again. They
got a better coach now. He's got a better coach. So I'll raise you. You're right. Those guys are better than Booker and Chris Paul. But I will go. Monty Williams will put them in better spots and in better positions there. Now, part of the problem might be that you're going to ask KD to do a lot more than maybe he's had to, a little bit more of a larger role for him in that situation. I just think this team really the big winner in that trade is actually DeAndre Ayton. Holy shit, the space he's going to have to roll into in space. Like, it's just okay. And who you're rotating a guard off of Torrey Craig because it's going to be a little that's you're hiding your worst defender on Torrey Craig at that point. You're going to
So he'll
rotate,
shoot a hook shot over a
that.
guard instead of a
He's
forward.
going to shoot 85% for the rest of the season.
Well, he'll be right at the rim. He'll be right at the rim, and I think that's an important aspect there. And I think just a spread pick and roll, and whoever you want as the ball handler. Good luck. It's hard. Like it's gonna be difficult, I think, in that end, and I think, they lost a lot of defense for sure. But I think KD is a better defender than we give him credit for, though he slipped a little bit over the past few years with the injuries. I think Booker's effort is better. CP is going to get picked on a little bit. I think Torrey Craig's been serviceable for them. And we're not done in the buyout market. There's going to be a lot more stuff going on. I think this is a massive move for them. But I think this puts them on par, because I have a lot of questions about Denver anyways with their defense. And I've voiced it many times at this point. Like, I think there's a lot of questions there.
No, if you're going to put them on par, like on a like sort of a seed line with Denver and Memphis, and you're going to say, and of those three, I think Phoenix has the best shot. I don't want to have too much of an argument with you there. The rush to anoint them as like the odds-on favorite to come out of the West, I think is a little too quick.
Don't read my Bleacher Report article.
There is no. That's right. Read Mo over at Bleacher Report. There is no perfect.
Everybody
team.
But Seth.
That's right. There is no perfect team this season. We've been saying that over and over and over again. But the Suns got closer to perfect than they were previous. I mean, you had Kevin Durant, and he was playing MVP level basketball when he went down. This is like, and this was, one of these freak injuries that happened to KD where guys roll into his legs. His defense, yes, it is not what it was, in those Warriors years. But this season, there are examples, tons of film where he stepped up and he was guarding the opposing team's best player for Brooklyn because they just didn't have anybody. So I know that in high leverage situations, KD is able to turn it up. I just don't think that can be a reliable thing for your defense. You can't just say, all right, well, KD is going to be our stopper come playoff time. And I'd love to see him get another guy, but Torrey Craig probably be okay. You guys got anything else on that, or should we move on? We don't have all day here.
It's too many trades.
There's too much stuff happening. And we haven't talked about Kyrie. Guys, Kyrie was the precursor to the KD trade. Kyrie Irving goes to the Dallas Mavericks along with Markieff Morris in exchange for Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, and picks. And we got to see Kyrie without Luka Wednesday night with Dallas. And, 24 points, guy looks good. He's a great basketball player. I think the fit there on the offensive end, guys, man, it's very obvious. But they gave up a lot of defense. Now, Dorian Finney-Smith has not been Dallas's best wing defender this year, but over the last couple seasons, he's been their most important defender. And I think that the whole run that they went on in the Western Conference Finals last year was because it was a Dorian Finney-Smith defense. That defense flying all over the place with the switchability, and it was keyed by him. So that's a big piece for them to lose. But obviously Kyrie Irving is an offensive talent that is, there's not a lot of equals in the league. So what do you guys think about that trade?
Yeah, the honest truth is, like, they don't care about their defense, because even with the guys that they had, they were 24th, 25th in defensive rating. We're going all in on offense right now. It's a risk. We know everything that comes with it with Kyrie. Like, it's definitely a risk you're playing with when you're doing that whole getting in the Kyrie business. Just ask the Cavs, ask the Celtics, ask the Nets right now. I think offensively, I don't really have a lot of questions. I think my biggest concern for this team offensively might be, do they have enough shooting around those guys? Can they really, will they have enough spacing in that opportunity? But I mean, talk about having to defend the Suns. I mean, goddamn, defend the Mavs. When Kyrie comes off a screen and maybe, I will hope to see that we see them play off of each other more and not be my turn, your turn sort of situation with the Mavs offensively. But I think offensively they're loaded. And I think those two guys will take them a long way. I just don't think I think it put a ceiling on their playoff run.
Offensively, you do have kind of the questions that we've come back to about not necessarily Luka's ability, but willingness to play off the ball, to really maximize the synergy between those two players. My thought about this trade is more about, I think, having thought about it for a few days, and it seems like it's forever ago that it happened, is that the kind of the disappointment that they put themselves in a position that a trade like this seems like their best option. I think it's a high variance. I think for all the reasons we can talk about, and some we are frankly sick of talking about. The downsides of this, I think, are obvious in terms of a team blowing up, of another star becoming disgruntled, and so on and so forth. But also, kind of the everything works out is that ceiling is higher now. And maybe from where Dallas had put themselves from an overall team building standpoint, that's the best they could hope for. But you just don't like the fact of having got there in the first place.
You know, you can say that winning solves everything, but we just watched Kyrie leave a situation where they were winning basketball games. So I can't even say, oh yeah, this is going to go great as long as they win games, which theoretically should work. You know, everybody should be happy if you're winning games. But the truth is, Kyrie Irving is such a wild card as a personality that you just never know what you're running into. And then they make this trade and they have to sign him to a contract this summer. He wants a max. I mean, this is why he was available in the first place. I mean, he asked for a trade because he didn't get the max from Brooklyn. Now, if he gotten the max from Brooklyn, he still might have asked for a trade next season from Brooklyn, because that's how Kyrie is. And so you're getting into the Kyrie Irving business, guys, and business has been bad for everybody not named Kyrie Irving when they're doing business with Kyrie. And now you've got a generational superstar in Luka Doncic, a couple of years removed from being a free agent. This feels like, number one, feels like a little bit of a desperation move. Number two, feels like the beginning of the end to me for Luka, maybe in Dallas. I mean, he was griping about needing to upgrade the roster, and now you brought in a wild card. So, I mean, I hope it all works out, because I'd like to see this guy play in Dallas for the rest of his career. And I think you need it to work out to make sure that happens. But also, they might lose Kyrie this summer anyway to free agency.
Well, I just think part of it is, for them, it's also their ability to get out of this trade if it doesn't work out and lose Kyrie there. And, you know, their pick this year is going to go to the Knicks. They'll have more picks to be able to play with. That pick to the Brooklyn Nets is in the future, so they're kind of in a good situation with where they're at. I just think, you know, it's definitely a high risk, high reward scenario with all that. But they're also showing Luka, like, yes, we're going to go get it. We're going to go try. And just beyond all the off-court stuff, you got a superstar talent in Kyrie Irving for two role players. Like, that's kind of a thing you got to do. And I think that's the situation you jump in on, and you keep him away from teams in the West so that there's not teams that are passing you and so on. You know, if he ends up at the Lakers, you're looking at the Lakers going like, wow, they're going to go buy us. You know, if he ended up in Phoenix, that's another team, although they got his partner. I think there's a lot of stuff with that scenario. I think they had to kind of make that move.
You say again, it's, why is he available for the relative, you know, a pick and two role players? And that gets us back on the same circle again. So that's why, like, this trade, I mean, you can go round and round on this trade. Like, this is why you do it. This is why you wouldn't want to do it. So it's when we probably could for the rest of the time. We got too much else to get to, don't we?
Yes, we do. Because
each of these trades could be their own hour-long.
You know, let me just go ahead and apologize, because I've been part of the NBA propaganda machine that has said, you know what, guys, everybody's in it. It's going to be a quiet deadline. Everybody's going to sit on it, what they have. They're going to try to make a push. No, man, it wasn't quiet at all. There was a lot of reshuffling, but there were a lot of moves too. Let's talk about the trade partner for both Dallas and Phoenix, the Nets, because in the last year, they've traded James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant, and now they have Ben Simmons. They got a ton of picks. Okay, so they control a lot of picks now. They did move Jay Crowder to the Bucks, so that trade got done for Milwaukee. They have Mikal Bridges. They have Cam Johnson. They have Dorian Finney-Smith. They have Spencer Dinwiddie. They have a lot of guys that would be really good pieces on teams that are already good. But outside of Cam Thomas, they don't have a star.
I see what you did there. This sounds a lot like the 2018-19 Brooklyn Nets.
I mean, love this team already, guys. If they sign Danny Green, we're in business.
A good vibe. They got a good vibes coach again, just like with Kenny Atkinson. Taking the long view of kind of the experiment. Yes, it didn't work, but by the standards of this, like how it worked out in terms of the injuries, in terms of the personalities, was among the worst case scenarios when you threw that group together, and to be able to pivot out and be here instead of a smoking wreck of a franchise like we've seen so many times before. I think you do have to give a little bit of credit for the agility to both get themselves into the situation, but they were possibly a toenail from a title. And then when it went south to get here, I mean, yes, you used 3 years, but you gave yourself a shot, and now you're actually in decent shape again.
Well, if the pandemic doesn't happen, there's a scenario in which this team wins a couple titles, and obviously that was not in their control. And a lot of it wasn't just the pandemic. It was certain person's response to pandemic prevention measures that really ultimately tanked part of the seasons for them. But I mean, yeah, we could sit and say, you know what, you get a couple of guys of the caliber of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, you go for it. And I think that is always going to be the smart move. But handing the keys to your franchise to, a guy who's blown up a couple places already,
I think it's
smart.
I think it's anybody at this point. I think we see, we'll talk about the LA teams, but I think that, that they have had similar problems even without stars of the same sort of team killing bent. So I think that understanding you do want to empower your stars, but knowing when to say no, I think is the overarching lesson of this.
The one, I just want to say, we keep saying like the pandemic is this, and Kyrie blows things up all the time. If it wasn't that, it would have been something else, guys. Like, it's just like, I get it. And you're right. And he would have this and that, but something else would have happened. It would have been something else that he would have decided to do. This is what he does in that sense. I think the Nets, I mean, we're going to have a whole run of this, and we can do just a whole show on what Seth was talking about of teams handing the keys to players. But I think the ultimate thing is they've done a good job sort of reloading everything, and they have a ton of draft assets now. I know people hate all the pick hoarding. They have a ton of wings. A lot of people are going to be asking them for stuff, and I think that's going to be looking at those guys. Dorian Finney-Smith, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson are all going to be guys people are going to want to do for them and make a run at it. And I think this is just an interesting stuff. They reset now. Now they can get back to trying to just be the Nets and figure out where they go from here in this stuff. The one thing I'd say that's interesting about this for the Nets, though, I would wonder if they would have made a different trade for Kyrie if the order of operations was the other way around. If they traded Kevin Durant first and moved him and then said, okay, now we're trading Kyrie, does it become the Laker 2 picks are more valuable now or whatnot? Because the move they made with Dallas was, hey, these guys are going to work with KD. Like, we think this can make that happen. And I think that's a very interesting what if in the millions of what ifs in Brooklyn we could talk about.
And personally, like, I was looking forward to seeing KD with a bunch of high quality role players around him. I think that would have been a lot of fun. KD's an underrated playmaker for other guys. And when you have smart basketball players with good size, I mean, that would have been a lot of fun for me. Now the Nets are going to be fun for me anyway, but that's because, I'm really a basketball sicko. The Nets, though, hoarding wings is smart. And when you hear the reports about what the Raptors were asking for OG Anunoby, imagine going into the summer with Mikal Bridges and saying, you know what, like we're going to jumpstart a rebuild even further. What do you think they could get for him? I mean, they could probably clear some picks for Mikal Bridges. Cam Johnson's going to be a restricted free agent this summer. It might be a guy who they could get involved with, a sign and trade. They've got a lot of tools at their disposal to rebuild. It's just now we're Kyrie's talking about how he's happy that that KD got out of there. Seems like not the greatest relationship with stars. I wonder how much that affects Brooklyn going forward, but they did get at least a fair amount out of these two trades. The KD trade is an okay haul. It's still cheap if you're Phoenix. You do that all day to get Kevin Durant. I mean, this guy is an MVP level player, still playing at an MVP level. I think you do it no matter what. You got a shot at a title, legitimate shot at a title this year and next year.
I think yes, I agree with that. I think that I started out talking about sort of the new owner announce your presence with authority syndrome. You do feel that this got done fast enough that it was, I don't care, get it done. And I think this deal is so good from Brooklyn's perspective. Could you have done it without, Cam Johnson or one of Johnson or Bridges? Could you have done it with one or two fewer picks or without the swap? I think you probably could have, but there was they did it
without Ayton, though, right? But like that was a win to me.
I here's the thing, like they gave up a lot, but I think part of it too, and we're back to talking about this trade again. We're not progressing forward, guys. We'll get backwards.
We'll get there.
We're going backwards. But the to your point though, Seth, on that stuff, the Nets didn't have to trade Kevin Durant. He wasn't going to be a free agent at the end of the year. He wasn't going to be a free agent at the end of next season. Like they didn't have to. If you were going to make this move and you're the Phoenix Suns, you have to make your best offer right off the bat and say, yo, let's go right now. And I think that's the situation they were in. And I think that's just what they got to do. And it cost them a lot. I have no question about it. But they're in a much better position than what they were before this trade. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I like Mikal Bridges. I like Cam Johnson. That team was not going to the championship. That team was not going to the conference finals. We weren't talking about them as one of the potential favorites. They were getting healthy. They were looking better as they were getting healthy. But I still would have had Denver higher. I still would have had Memphis higher. Like, I just think that's one of those things with that trade is that's what that trade did. And now let's see what they do when they build upon that.
Yeah.
I think my final, can I
go ahead?
Just a final thought on that is it's just I think the underlying point is there's no middle ground on this trade. Either it's a smashing success or it's disaster. They have a
which is what we want.
Yeah, no, you're right. They have a 2, maybe 3, and so a lot of it depends on where you think Chris Paul is. Frankly, they have the 1 to 3 year window to win a title, and if they don't, the back half of it is gonna look ugly.
Yeah,
I mean. That's what all these guys, that's what a lot of these teams are in. But you know what? They still didn't even make as dumb a trade as Minnesota did for Rudy Gobert with their ownership trying to come in and throw their weight around. So I think that you just kind of look at it that way. At least they still don't look that bad.
Yeah. Well, speaking of not looking that bad, guys, wake up because the Lakers got better. They basically have a whole new team after the trade deadline, guys. Russell Westbrook gone. He's out of there. Got sent to Utah in a 3-team trade with the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Lakers get D'Angelo Russell, Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley. They also made another trade, Patrick Beverley, and a 2nd-round pick to Orlando for Mo Bamba, and they sent Thomas Bryant to the Denver Nuggets for Devon Reed. This, guys, is a completely different team than the one that they had 2 days ago. They I right off the bat, it seems that Russ could be addition by subtraction off the court. On the court, D'Angelo Russell might be a better fit. I don't know that necessarily he's going to give them, maybe perform better, but he may be a better fit, better shooter. Man, but I love them getting Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt. That's 2 pieces that they could really use. They got a a versatile big defender who can play next to Anthony Davis. He can play without Anthony Davis. And then you got Malik Beasley, who is just a flamethrower from deep. How do you guys feel about the Lakers outside of, yes, they got better? How you guys feeling about the moves that they made?
They had a good trade deadline. Like, honestly, I think when you look at it and the fact that it only cost them one of the two picks that we were all expecting them to move at some point, they've upgraded their roster in a way where it's like, hey, man, this is impressive. And I think, go check out the piece I think that's dropped with Jovan Buha and Sam Amick about how tough it was having Russ around. And although Russ is playing an important role and was doing really well for them off the bench, became an untenable situation for them. And I think that's a big one there. I think, they've added a little bit size with Mo Bamba to kind of help them a bit, after they traded Thomas Bryant. I think that's an important one when that 80s health history is sketchy. I think they've added shooting. They've added defense. Like, I don't know if let me put it this way. I'm not running up and down going like this team's ceiling is so high. I still think, hey, they're
they didn't get Kevin Durant.
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, but maybe they're a play-in team. I think they're a play-in team, actually. Maybe they're a 6 seed, depending on what happens to some of the other teams in the West. But I think, it's for what they had to do. They did a good job, man. And me, I will not hesitate to crush Rob Pelinka. And I thought, like, hey, man, they were in a shitty situation and they figured it out.
I actually think Pelinka should get some credit here because it was a good trade deadline, if conservative, right? I think it definitely leaned conservative. It wasn't a huge splash, but maintaining that 29 pick, because that's a tool that they can use this summer. They're going to be guys. We just mentioned all these wings that might be available for trade. Free agency is kind of dead, but you may be able to go out in the summer and put together a sign and trade package, and keeping that pick is just massive. That's a huge win for them. But overall, man, they've got a better basketball team. They added to 3 quality players and Mo Bamba, who might be a rotation piece for them, who is worth. He's not going to play in the playoffs if they make it, but I liked what they did. I thought it was a pretty solid trade deadline for him. Seth, did you have any strong feelings about the Lakers? Well, you have any strong feelings about the Lakers trade deadline, I should say?
How dare you? No, I think you summarized it well. I think they got better. I think Mo's right that we're not better is still not on that level of the top team. I think a lot of the players they got, the idea is maybe a little bit better than the actual what they got. I think across the board, all 4 players they brought in, the idea is probably better than the player. Malik Beasley is, as you say, a flamethrower, questionable defensively. Jared Vanderbilt is one of those guys that we've talked about before, like gets a little overrated as a defender because he runs around a lot. Mo Bamba has got some talent, but he's up and down. And D'Angelo Russell, I think you guys know how I feel about him. And while he's a better shooter, kind of some of the same kind of brain fart end of game stuff that Russ did, I think there's that in his game. It'll be a different style of those kind of mistakes, but I think we'll see a lot of those same mistakes. So, but still, that's still 4 players for kind of one rotation guy. You're happy about that. You filled some holes. You're getting better minutes across the board, but it's not championship level minutes.
And I actually think D'Angelo Russell will be better in LA than he was in Minnesota. Having a clear and established pecking order is going to be good for him. It's going to be good. He can shoot. He's a great secondary playmaker. So, second side action, he can run pick and roll with guys. He's a really gifted passer, but he's not going to be running the offense down the stretch like he was doing in Minnesota and hijacking, the ball basically from a better player. I mean, LeBron James is going to run shit in LA. And I think that's going to be good for D'Angelo Russell. And now they also are probably going to have to sign him to a contract this summer. So this is a little bit of a forward thinking move. And if they can get him,
that's a key part of this trade here of all these, of these trades is that these guys are expirings. And that's, somebody will have to check on Mo Bamba's contract. I just know the other guys are.
Yeah.
Don't sleep on them signing Kyrie in the offseason or finding a way to make that happen. Like everybody always talks about cap space. When teams are motivated, they can find a way to clear the cap space they need to go get the guy. And I think don't sleep on that being part of the equation and him not being a Laker beyond this season. Like I think that's very possible.
I think that's it's sort of, again, tying back to the Brooklyn situation. Which of these teams would you rather be short? And I think that's a big reason that you would probably rather be short Dallas, is what Mo just said.
Yeah. No, again, I have no expectations of Kyrie being in Dallas beyond the season. The other two teams involved in the big Russell Westbrook trade, the Timberwolves, they get Mike Conley, and listen, this is an improvement in their starting lineup. I think Conley's fit next to Anthony Edwards makes a lot of sense. Essentially going back to the role that he's been playing next to Donovan Mitchell. We know he's got good chemistry with Rudy Gobert. I'm assuming we all like the Conley move, the upgrade, so to speak, for D'Angelo Russell.
The way I termed it was the Wolves got an adult. That's
and
kind of what
one.
they needed.
Yeah,
and
they needed
that's an important aspect of that. And I think that's something that is we always talk about having good vets and things like that. He's a hell of a good vet. And I think they got an adult, and I think he will help them in that regard better than Russell. And I think it's important. All the other names that we saw attached to that team, I think this is a good one for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the only downside of it I see for Minnesota is when they were shipping Russell out before we knew they were getting Conley back. One of the things I've liked best from them this season is closing with the ball in Anthony Edwards' hands. And I still think they'll do that a lot, but it's almost a don't put the club in the bag for the like make him get those reps.
I think the move was for that reason more so than not. And I think that's kind of an important piece to that for the Wolves. And I think that's part of it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. And then Utah, obviously, this was a reset season for them. They traded away Donovan Mitchell. They traded away Rudy Gobert. They've taken on all these draft assets. And I think the question if you're Utah is, how come they didn't get more for these guys? The reporting coming out ahead of the deadline was that they thought they might get a first for Beasley and a first for Vanderbilt. They wound up with the one first from the Lakers. It's the 2027 first. It's top 4 protected, but it will convey no matter what in 2027. This is how the Lakers keep the ability to move that 2029 pick, which they wound up not doing. But they are going to get the 2027 first. And that's it. I think if you're Utah, like probably a little bit disappointed you couldn't get a little bit more for these guys, right?
I think that's just people overestimating the market. When we look at the grand scheme of these trades, and I bet if somebody did a count, way more second round picks got moved than first round picks. I think teams were a little bit more hesitant in that department. And I think the idea of everybody's worth a first round pick, like, sorry, no, they're not. And, I think this was a fair deal in that for Utah. I think they know that. I think some of that is Danny Ainge being Danny Ainge. And, everybody goes for a first round pick. Our equipment guy goes for a first round pick. Our video guy goes for a first round pick. I think that was part of what the posturing they were doing more than anything else.
Do we need a step-in rule for second round picks?
Called the Presti rule? I actually think that step-in should go away.
I'm kidding. No, if you've talked to Sarah Todd at the Desert News, she's been talking about how they were very anxious to get rid of Beasley to clear a pathway for Ochai Agbaji, and Jared Vanderbilt, and she very much echoed my earlier thought that Jared Vanderbilt is the effort doesn't match the achievement. So I think that they were, that they were hoping for more, but they liked what they got. I was a little surprised that they didn't, they were a team that was maybe going after John Collins, and they didn't knowing that they have Larry Markkinen, knowing that they have Walker Kessler, make a move to sort of build the other way with some of these assets. I was surprised they didn't, but ultimately, if the asking prices were too much, then I'm not terribly surprised that they didn't.
You made the mistake of assuming that John Collins is allowed to be traded. It's just not. It's just another game of, oh, so and so's on the block, and
now that Eric Gordon's been traded, John Collins, you're the new Eric Gordon. That's where we're at. He's just for the rest of his career.
It's just we're just stuck in that spot, and I think that's just more of my deal with the John Collins stuff. But let's get to the next trade, Dave.
All right, guys. Let's talk a little bit. We're going to kind of group some of these together. We've hit like the major trades, but the Warriors, they move on from James Wiseman, the 2020 number 2 pick. In a weird trade, it was a 3-team trade with the Atlanta Hawks and the Detroit Pistons. Detroit sends Sadiq Bey to Atlanta. James Wiseman goes to Detroit, and then Atlanta sends 5 second-round picks to the Warriors, and the Warriors flip those 5 second-round picks for Gary Payton II to the Portland Trailblazers. So they wind up essentially trading James Wiseman for Gary Payton II, a guy that they should have re-signed during the summer. Look, it's a win to get Gary Payton back. It is a major loss to just have essentially lost James Wiseman for nothing.
Is it? I mean,
I think it is.
Is that just realizing a loss that it already had accrued from kind of whiffing on that draft pick? And also there was the darkest timeline between when those 2 trades were announced, when it looked like they had just traded James Wiseman for a bunch of second-round picks and cap savings, which would have been a very, very, very sad, like, kind of coda to the light years kind of dominant era.
That would have been a sadder ending than Jordan after the second three-peat, leaving the Bulls. I mean, I think it would have been, like, if they had gone out with 5 second-round picks.
We're reaching out.
Listen, man, if they had not, look, they don't make a single move to bring in a better player, and you're just saying that's the end of the dynasty. Getting 5 second-round picks, that sucks.
There has to be something said about getting off your mistakes quickly.
Yes.
And I think that's an important thing there. And I almost think maybe even that they were a little bit slow.
We were
screaming about this last year. About getting off of them quickly. Happened. But should have happened last season. We were screaming off of this. But the good stuff about it for them is it did, and nobody cares about this, but it did cut $30 million off the tax bill. Nobody cares about Lacob's bill, but that's part of the component there, And I think, you said sign Gary Payton II last year in the offseason. They've actually couldn't. This actually worked out perfectly for them. He got paid and got more than he would have in Portland, and now gets to go play for the Warriors. I think that's a big win for them. They get somebody familiar with their system. I mean, he's been in and out of the lineup, so let's find out how healthy he really is. But they got somebody that they know can defend and knows their offense and knows how they want to play. Like, that's a win for them in that, and in that sort of tweaks department. Like, that's a good one for them. I think that's a very a good moment right now. If you're a Golden State, you got to be pretty happy.
I mean, can't we look at this and essentially see it as trading James Wiseman for Dante DiVincenzo?
That might be a better way to look at it. If you're the Warriors, absolutely. I mean, you're doing great Warriors propaganda here. I like it.
No, and if they had made a move like that, I mean, the kind of the move that we were noodling as kind of the sad move that would help them was James Wiseman for Mason Plumlee, and like James Wiseman for Dante DiVincenzo. You kind of like that better, although of course you would end up with both of them. But I think that the Warriors with DiVincenzo and Peyton probably are a better team than any other combination of those 4 players they could have ended up with.
When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish that you could do the same thing with your business team? If you're building a roster to win the league, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed's Instant Match Assessment and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed's employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. I love Indeed just because I can do all the hiring in one place. It's so easy to use, and it's honestly made my life so much easier. Candidates you invite to apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates only to see it in search, according to U.S. Indeed data. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/NBA Show22 to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/NBA22. Indeed.com/NBA22. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Yeah, I'm looking for the Warriors to, I guess, try to add a big on the buyout market. Serge Ibaka, who's now on the buyout market.
I think there'll be several.
They're going to have some options.
Get loaded here pretty quick.
Okay, let's talk about the favorites, guys. The teams that are out in front right now: the Bucks, the Nuggets, Philly. Been playing really well. Boston, they kind of hit on the margins. The Bucks get Jay Crowder, a guy that they've been attached to. They didn't have to give up Pat Connaughton. I think that's a pretty big deal because they do need that shooting, and Crowder will help them sort of withstand the loss of Bobby Portis for however long he's still out, but also gives them some depth where they need it, and a little bit of, it's not the same, but a little bit of Chris Middleton insurance. If Chris Middleton's banged up, you've got a guy that you can slide in at the 3-some, and he can give you some quality minutes. You guys feel okay with Jay Crowder as long as Jay Crowder is, healthy and in game shape and all of those little caveats?
It's fine. I think that Jay Crowder's probably basically a 4 at this point. But as you said, they didn't give up much. They didn't give up Marjon Beauchamp, which maybe doesn't matter so much for this year, but probably is very useful going forward. Either as a player to develop or a trade chip. So it's for what was out there. I mean, if you were to believe what was told, that Bojan Bogdanovic, for example, was not available at any sort of reasonable price, and there weren't there wasn't a bigger pond to fish in for what they had to offer. It's not. There's nothing wrong with it. It's an at the margins move that might help and can't possibly hurt.
I like it, but I'm also not going like completely crazy about it. Like they got an important piece, and I've seen people equate it to PJ Tucker, joining the Bucks. I don't know if it's of that level. And I think, the challenges that they're going to have in the playoffs and in terms of really their half court offense, and a lot of it's going to weigh on Middleton's health, is going to be important. I don't think he fixes it that much. I think the best thing is, though, it didn't cost him much, and he does fill an immediate role right now with Portis being out. And I think that's an important piece. And I'm with Seth. I think he's more before, he might be able to guard Jaylen Brown some in the playoffs and make things a little bit difficult. But I'm not seeing him as I'm not walking away going they're absolute champs. I think this is one of the finalists in the Eastern Conference. I think they just and I think they got better today. It's a good trade, and it didn't cost them much.
Moving on to Denver, they get Thomas Bryant, and look, I love this trade. This is the best backup center that they've had for Jokic since Nurkic, and that wasn't really
Plumlee
a thing
because
Jokic. Well, Jokic wasn't Jokic, when Nurkic was there. And Plumlee, look, we know my issues with Plumlee. The guy fouls more than he puts the ball in the basket. So, but Thomas Bryant can fill it up. He should help them in those 10 to 12 minutes a night where Jokic needs to take a breath and they go minus 20 in those 10 minutes. If he can get out there, rebound, stretch the floor a little bit for the bench units, if he can give them 8 points a game, man, that's such a massive win for them coming off the bench behind Jokic.
It was a massive hole. It was a massive hole, and we've seen that type of hole hurt potential contenders. Philadelphia is still reeling from that time against that Toronto series when Embiid had to go to the bench, and I think it's just
or the Atlanta series, or
right anytime,
Yeah.
right? And I think it was an important thing that they addressed, and I thought that was a really smart trade. And he's been good. He was good for the Lakers. I thought, maybe his minutes are going to go down with AD coming back, but like I was pretty impressed with him this season. So yeah, man, I'm overall, I think it was a smart move for them.
He's a high effort player, but not exactly the most effective defender. And so he's not going to help bolster the defense. And hopefully they don't do the Jokic defensive sub for Thomas Bryant. But as an offensive player, man, he gives you so much more than they were getting right now. And just another big body who is solid. I mean, Lakers fans are always going to have a different opinion of a guy that gets traded out. Thomas Bryant's super solid. I like this pickup a lot for Denver. The 76ers, they send out Matisse Thybulle. They get Jalen McDaniels from the Charlotte Hornets, and he was available because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent this summer. I love Jalen McDaniels. I love his length. He's a decent enough three-point shooter, but he's a willing shooter. This gives them, to me, an option that's not PJ Tucker. And I think that they now have a little bit more defensive versatility. How do you guys feel about what Philly did with McDaniels?
I think it's another crack at the same type of player. I think they're at the point where they don't consider Thybulle playable because of his offensive limitations in the playoffs. I think McDaniels still has something to prove, but a question mark is probably better than a no. So and also, I mean, we can't ignore that for a relatively minor move, probably lateral talent move, it also got them out of the tax, which is, it's just money, but it's actually, it's a lot of money, and probably buys you some goodwill later down the road when you want to spend money. So that probably helps a little in that regard.
Yeah, it was just a fly. It's just a flyer. As Seth said, they knew Thybulle couldn't play in the playoffs with his inability to shoot. Thybulle, I kind of think, needs a new place, to a change of scenery. So it's just a flyer at this point. I'm indifferent whether it really helps them or anything like that. I'm just like, all right, cool. We took a flyer on it. Why not?
I like Jalen McDaniels too much. And then the Boston Celtics, they get Mike Muscala, a legit spacing big. I mean, this guy shoots the lights out. And where Luke Cornett has some inconsistency as a shooter, Mike Muscala does not. So, he's not a guy who's going to get a ton of burn for them, I don't expect. It's a little bit of depth behind Al Horford, and, you can give Al Horford a night off here and there. Robert Williams needs a night off here and there, and Muscala can come in and he can give you some solid minutes. But the big thing is, when they need a guy to stretch the floor, and at the end of quarters, end of halves, Mike Muscala is their man.
I like it. I really like it for them. They desperately needed another big body there, and Cornette wasn't going to really make a massive dent there. I think this is a nice pickup for them. Williams is still coming back from his meniscus, and it's working his way. Horford's not even playing on back-to-backs. I think this is a important pickup, at least to get them to the playoffs. Almost like a relief pitcher that's going to eat innings, I think, is an important piece there. I really like it for them, and I think that was a very smart move for them.
I think, just to sum up all of these moves, is these were all very, they're all on the margins. They're all kind of targeted moves that we know this isn't a massive turn of the dial, but it's a focusing of what we're doing trade. And they had, I think each team had slightly different reasons for things that they were doing, but I think they all accomplished, incremental improvements, which, especially when you're kind of a contender that's sort of hit all in, and you don't have a ton to move. Those are kind of the deals you'd like to make. I do think that we should mention that Denver, for a team that is maybe slightly asset poor in terms of things to trade, the fact that they basically moved on from Bones Highland for
seconds,
minor,
a couple of seconds.
I think if we're to believe the reporting, that's as much of a personality locker room issue as anything. And that's, while it's disappointing, I think that's a perfectly for a team that has goals as they do, a guy who's not in your rotation, who's creating problems, is you're happy to see the back of him.
Yeah, and getting a couple of seconds, I guess is better than getting nothing.
This podcast is brought to you by Philo. There's nothing better than unwinding and watching a little TV. But you know what's not relaxing is just trying to figure out what to watch or paying a crazy cable bill every month. That's why I decided to cut the cord. I love TV now because I use Philo as my solution. Philo is live and on-demand TV for just $25 a month. Philo has VH1, BET, AMC, A&E, plus more than 60 other channels like Comedy Central, Nickelodeon, Paramount, Discovery. You never miss a minute of shows that you enjoy watching. I always enjoy watching the Food Network is really fun. My wife and even my kids like to sit down and watch the Food Network. Has some great shows there. My wife likes to unwind and watch a little Lifetime. You know what? Philo's got it. Even MTV right here on Philo. There's no contracts, no commitments, no hassles. Just a better way to watch TV. If you got little kids, you can watch Nickelodeon, catch the latest episode of Paw Patrol right there on Philo. Philo has no contracts, no commitments, no hassles, just a better way to watch TV. Philo has an unlimited DVR for 1 year. Save all your favorite shows, and you can watch them whenever you want. Philo also allows for multiple profiles and multiple streams, so everybody in your house can be happy, save your own shows simultaneously on 3 different streams, so you don't have to fight over what's being saved or what's being watched. It's so easy to use and really easy to sign up. You can watch from your laptop, from your phone, Fire TV, Roku, Apple TV, Samsung, Android TV, you name it. With Philo, you can start watching in seconds for less money, with less hassle, and channel comfort. Sign up today at philo.tv. That's philo.tv. And use the promo code NBA Show to get 50% off your first month.
And guys, we're getting a little bit long here, but I want to wrap up with what are we doing here with these last teams? Guys, Portland, what are they doing? They get Matisse Thybulle. They trade away Gary Payton II. I'm a bit confused by Portland. I don't feel like they didn't really do anything.
They filled the Mo Harkless Memorial defensive small forward who can't shoot slot to a T.
I mean, no, really, what the hell are they doing?
Are they trying to win? They're not trying to lose. They're not. It doesn't seem like they're trying to win.
But they're trading Josh Hart for draft picks, and
yeah, I'm lost.
There's so many questions.
Yeah,
so many questions for them with what are you doing? Okay, you get Matisse Thybulle. Okay, cool. You needed more defense, needed another defender on the wing. I kind of get that. Okay, but we just gave away Josh Hart. For Cam Reddish. Like Cam Reddish has really struggled, and I want to yell at the Knicks fans and things like that. Dave, I'm just telling you, we're going a little bit long because I have a lot of teams I need to yell at, and you guys kept going to the KD trade. I don't understand the thought process here. You keep saying we're going to build a championship team around Dame, and you continue to do the exact opposite over and over again. And I just don't understand what this team's doing, what their plan is. I almost feel like they got lost here in the trade deadline and just felt like they had to make a move.
I mean, I'm lost. If that helps you at all. I'm not sure. I just don't get it. It doesn't really make any sense to me. You still have 2 small non-defensive guards up front. And now you've got a guy who is not going to have to be guarded on offense, and Matisse Thybulle when he's out there, who I assume you have to play because you just don't have a lot of guys. You just gave up Gary Payton II. But Thybulle still can't be the guy that goes out and guards the opposing team's best player. That's going to still have to be Jeremy Grant. Tyball's not that defender. He's a good help defender, works well in zone, but just not the greatest one-on-one defender. So all in all, a weird trade deadline for Portland. The Memphis Grizzlies, a team that we thought have had a really good chance of coming out of the West and actually had a chance to shake up the deadline, shake up the whole league because of the assets that they have. They get Luke Kennard. He's a nice player. He's a good shooter, but he just doesn't shoot enough. You guys disappointed with Memphis?
I am. Again, this is now we've hit the point where we're on just like my shit list teams. And I know Seth is kind of nodding or whatnot. You play too conservative, and now you end up being behind. Because we can say whatever you want. There's a new team that's contending in the West, and the Phoenix Suns. They weren't contending a week ago. You were conservative. You didn't play. You played it kind of safe and didn't want to give up your draft picks because you draft so well and all of these things, and you're injured now and all of this stuff. But I think they missed a grand opportunity to say, and we've said it early in the year, why not now? This was an opportunity for them to say, why not now? These windows are never as big or as wide as you think they are. Hallways or whatever the hell.
Hallways not as long
on this podcast. Hallways not as long. It's just, you have to go for it when the opportunities are there. I thought they had a prime opportunity to. We'll find out what the asking price for OG Anunoby is in the coming days, I'm sure, as more stuff comes out. But I just felt like, okay, you got Luke Kennard. Great. You got another shooter that doesn't shoot. And that's one of the reasons why the Clippers traded him. They've been begging him to shoot, and he doesn't take shots. And that's impressive for a guy that shot 40% from three last year and led the NBA there. Like, you would think, green light, go. That's fine, but it doesn't do anything. And it doesn't really move them in a way where I just felt like they missed a strong opportunity.
On the OG Anunoby front, that's maybe if you're getting back to Portland for just a second, maybe you say, well, they added a lot of draft capital to attach with Anthony Simons over the summer to go after Anunoby. If you're going to be like super, kind. But as far as Memphis goes, yeah, I agree with you. It seems like we have lauded this front office for their ability to kind of accumulate assets and get them to a certain point. But at a certain point, there's that pivot point between when we need more guys to play good minutes to we need to add championship minutes. And it kind of seems like they've missed several opportunities in a row. They kind of almost willingly took a step back in some ways, roster-wise, this offseason. We thought it was to give them flexibility to make a move at this trade deadline, like letting D'Anthony Melton and Kyle Anderson go. And then they, Kennard's a nice player. He had some shooting. Maybe you think new environment, ball moves a little bit better here than it did with the Clippers, and so maybe he gets back to being a chucker. But still, that's for a team that has some clear spots to upgrade in not just on their bench, but in the starting lineup. I think we've done chapter and verse on the Dylan Brooks problem a number of times. To just not do it, as other teams are, as you say, getting further ahead, it's a little disappointing.
The other side of the Kennard trade, I mean, the Clippers, they wind up getting Eric Gordon, Bones Highland, and Mason Plumlee. They're the favorites right now, if the reporting is accurate, to sign Russell Westbrook once his buyout is complete. I'm done with
you go first, because I'm done with the
Clippers.
Seth, you go first, because I'm ready to go here. I'm going to go off here. You go first.
So I generally think that is a pretty sharp organization in terms of how they run, but their seeming obsession with a certain kind of vet is puzzling to me. I don't actually like the moves around the edges. Like Highland is sort of whatever. Picking up Eric Gordon is nice. Getting more help in the middle is nice, but they were small outside of Zubac, so picking up Plumlee is nice. So I don't hate those. It's just, again, for a team that probably needed a little bit of freshening up, to not do anything bigger, and then to triple down on sort of the buyout point guard. They Reggie Jackson 1 year, then sign him to a contract. John Wall this year, that doesn't work out, and now, I think we need to wait on like going too far in on him until it actually happens. But should that happen, I agree with you. It's I don't understand the vision there if that's where they're going.
I'm going to, because you're right. We shouldn't kill them until it happens. but because I feel like that's going to be a whole week away before I actually get to do it.
Yeah.
I'm just
Kill
going
him
to do
twice,
it now
Mo.
as a
Kill him now,
as
kill
a
him later.
preemptive. No, I'm not going to kill him later. This is a preemptive one. If they do that, I just think I will have lost a lot of respect for the entire organization and just the thought process. Because Seth's right. Like it's a very sharp organization. The moves they make are shrewd. The Norman Powell move last year was unbelievable. Was going nuts about it. Said this move's going to make them really good this year and all of that stuff. But now they're just going after other dudes' friends. And we've seen this happen now over and over again across the league. And it simply is not smart. And I think it's just silly on that respect. I think the way they go about it is dumb. I think the fact is you're literally moving off John Wall to bring the worst John Wall, right? Like the problems you had with John Wall was his inability to play with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. I have no idea what makes you think Russ is going to be able to play with both those guys just because he did it with PG when he was in Oklahoma City. And let's not make a mistake with the fact that PG is one of the dudes is pushing this. And he was the one that pushed the Reggie Jackson thing. And you forgot a name in the point guards you listed, Seth, because they also went after Rajon Rondo. Ooh, you got a name and you play the point guard position? Come do it here. It's ridiculous now at this point, and it's tiresome. And I just think it's one of those things where it's like, you know what? I'm with you, Dave. I'm out. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense anymore with what they're doing, how they're operating. I think just all the things and the way they go about it, it's just dumb at this point, you know? And I don't mind the moves they made. Bones, whatever. I don't know if he's going to play that much or matter for them as much. I think they're going to play Terrence Mann more, and I hope they lean into Mann more. But I just think the what they're doing and this whole concept of now they're linked to Russ. And at the start, by the way, at the trade deadline, they were linked to Kyle Lowry at one point. Like, oh, okay. I was like, oh, that fits. The one name I like that they were linked with Fred VanVleet, but I think the price was probably too high for them. And I think that kind of knocked them out. But like at this point now, they're just being desperate.
Yeah, no,
I mean, 13 second-round picks to get Fred VanVleet.
No, I mean, I think the best point you made there is about like, you know, going after guys' friends. It's not show friends, it's show business. And
that's right.
You know, we're trying to win a title here. You can talk about the ring in the offseason with your buddies. Gotta win.
And I think and I think organizations need to learn the lesson of stop turning this stuff all to the players. And it's what we kind of hinted at the beginning, and I don't know if we'll ever get back to it, but just the pure fact of LeBron got the Lakers into this Russ business, and now Paul George might possibly get the Clippers into this Russ business. It's just not smart.
Look,
these guys know in the front office it doesn't work. It's not smart. And then
Josiah is going to do a TED talk on this at Summer League for all the other owners. Just don't hand the keys of your franchise over to basketball players. It's maybe not the best thing.
Best three.
I just want to hit.
Go ahead.
Best 3 years of my life. Let me tell you about it.
In 2020, there were over 5 million car crashes. That's more than 15,000 a day and 600 in an hour. You know, I had a friend that was injured in a car crash recently, and handling it with his insurance was a complete disaster. He did not get everything he was entitled to, and it was just honestly awful. What an awful situation that my friend had to go through. If you're ever injured, you should check out Morgan & Morgan. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 800 lawyers. With over $15 billion recovered from clients, Morgan & Morgan has a proven track record of fighting to get you full and fair compensation. Submitting an injury claim with Morgan & Morgan is so easy, it's more like using an app than hiring a lawyer. In fact, it's so easy, it's more like ordering takeout than hiring a lawyer. With Morgan & Morgan, you can submit a claim without even having to leave the couch. Just open up your phone, and in 8 clicks or less, you're already done. If you're ever injured in an accident, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/NBA show or dial #LAW. Pound 529 from your cell phone. That's FOR thepeople.com/NBA show or #LAW. Pound 529 from your cell.
Yes. I just want to hit one more team. I just want to point out the Knicks traded a first-round pick to get Cam Reddish for a player that the coach did not want. And now they had to trade a first-round pick to get off of Cam Reddish.
Yeah, we could do the dumb trade pod some other time, because Devontae Graham cost the Pelicans a pick, first-round pick, and they cost them a lot to move off of, including the money that they paid him while he was there. But my last team, guys, with the what are we doing here? The Toronto Raptors are, they've got Jakob Poeltl back in the fold, and we really thought this team had decided that it was over, that the experiment was done. They were going to turn it around. They were going to move off OG Anunoby. They were going to get off Fred VanVleet, who's going to be a free agent this summer. They've got Gary Trent Jr., who's going to be a free agent this summer. We thought, hey, they're going to turn over a new leaf. It's time to build around Scotty Barnes. Maybe even Pascal Siakam could be on the way out. And when you look at the haul that some of the stars got, maybe they should have. But instead, they get Jakob Poeltl, the center that they sent away in the Kawhi Leonard trade, the center that they probably could have gotten before the season, and the center that probably would have made them a better team for the first half of the season instead of the disaster that they've sort of been, Mo.
Yeah, I just think I find it interesting. You make the move for Jakob Poeltl. It's an opportunity. It's your want to climb up the standings. They're 10th right now in the play-in, and I think that's fine with all that. And they kick the can to making these decisions in the offseason. With all that, I think the price changes for some of these guys in the offseason. I think the price gets lower for OG Anunoby in the offseason, just on the pure fact of part of the reason why you were getting such a high price for him now was for teams that were trying to contend right now. And now they would have gotten 2 playoff runs out of OG Anunoby instead of possibly just one, if they move him in the offseason and things like that. I feel like this is just one of those things where, hey, man, we just want all the phone calls. And I think they got a lot of due diligence. They got a lot of recon on how the league is valuing their guys and whatnot. I think across the board. But I think at the end of the day, everybody's always saying like, hey, these deals will also be available in the offseason. I'm not sure they're going to be able to get as much as they would have if they look to move some of these guys now that they might get in the offseason should they move off them.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that.
I think if they want players instead of picks, they want guys who are going to, really not redirect, not rebuild with. I think that just the mechanics of with the roster rules relaxing in the offseason, I do think that there's maybe some more opportunity, especially if a guy you're looking at is Siakam. I do think that becomes broad strokes. I agree with you, but it's not. I do think there are some opportunities in the offseason that might not have been available now.
Well, I never thought Siakam was actually going to move this year. I just felt like that was always an offseason move. But I'm looking mainly at OG. And again, we kind of touched on it a little bit too, though. Now they have a competitor. Brooklyn has just as many wings. And, maybe it's a lower price now in that area of guys they want to move off of. So now it's the market's almost saturated.
And better. Mikal Bridges is a better player and better asset than OG Anunoby is right now.
Brooklyn's not going to look to move Bridges. I'm looking more at the Dorian Finney-Smiths.
Sure,
maybe they don't want to pay Cam Johnson, but
if you're a team who was in on OG Anunoby at this deadline, going into the summer, you're probably going to call Brooklyn first. Frankly, Mikal Bridges under contract for a few years, is a better player, and maybe it costs you a little bit more, but the long-term control matters. This is, to your point, Mo, where he actually loses value by going into the summer. Guys, we're over an hour. You guys got anything else before we wrap up?
Seth had one.
We talked about what are we doing here? What if the answer is nothing, and you're the Chicago Bulls? I mean,
I have nothing for them.
I have nothing either. I have no thoughts on the Bulls because
they didn't do anything, they're just kind of, there was some just an afterthought, and that they're not a team that is, they're aging and shrinking, and they've made some poor moves in the power, some moves that haven't worked out at minimum in the past, and they did nothing to reset, retool, or anything. And I just, you only get so many windows to do these things, and They did nothing, and I feel for their fans. I think it's very frustrating to have a team that has obvious needs, obvious holes, obvious weaknesses, and just do nothing to address any of them.
Yeah, well, it's the Bulls, and this is kind of how they've been the last few years. Anything else on the trade deadline or looking ahead as we wrap up here?
I'm tired.
I'm exhausted.
I'm also tired. I think that I do think a big change we saw is that the teams that had kind of lower end rotation pieces to move, I think that they kind of were more willing to take what they could get this year than they were last year, when it seemed like, based on sort of reporting both before and after the trade deadline, that teams sort of held the line on kind of silly prices and kind of rolled over guys that probably should have been dealt. So I think we saw a lot more movement, and that's probably, the fact that teams were willing to take X number of seconds instead of holding out no must have a first. I think that really served to loosen up the trade market this year.
I got nothing. I'm done.
Nothing.
I'm so glad this trade deadline is over. I'm so tired.
Aren't we all? And now we're in the home stretch. We got All-Star game coming up. Playoffs are going to be here before you know it. And, we'll be right here on the Athletic NBA show. For Seth Partnow and Mo Dakhil, I'm Dave DeFore, and this has been Nerder. She wrote on the Athletic NBA show. Keep it locked into the Athletic for all your post-trade deadline fallout.